What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric. That's my co-host Will, and today we're going to be revisiting our running back rankings for the 2023 season. Of course, immediately after we put them out, there was a lot of shakeups. We had Dalvin Cook to the Jets, we had Zeke to the Patriots, and currently we're still waiting on news for JT and his potential trade to the Dolphins. So bear with us. Hopefully, some news breaks as we're making this video, but just to be clear, it's currently 9:23 a.m. on Tuesday, August 29th. So, if news breaks after this video comes out, obviously you'll understand, but we'll talk about the potential of him staying in Indy, the potential of him moving, all that good stuff. Before we get into it, one, Will, how you doing? And two, you got anything to say to the people before we get started?
Hey man, I'm feeling great. I'm hoping that this time we don't have a ton of news after this video is made, but It's the nature of the business. I'm just glad to be here. And with that being said, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers before the season starts. It's a lofty goal. We got about this week to make it there, but I think we can do it. So if you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, it's the best way to get our stuff out there. You can help us expand our reach. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into these rankings and tier lists. This is actually our old tier list that we have pulled up from the other video that we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage you guys to go back and look at that one. Obviously, we're changing things around a little bit from what's changed since then, but there's still a lot of good information in there. And we probably won't go as in-depth with the specific player analysis since we've already done that. So go check that video out if you haven't. But yeah, let's start with the guys that I just mentioned off the top and where they're probably going to be moving to. We'll save JT for last just in case some news breaks while we're doing this. Hey, post-edit, Eric and Will here. Of course, the news broke this afternoon after we had already recorded that JT is not getting traded as of now. He's staying with the Colts, and he also didn't get activated off the PUP, which means even if he does get traded or if he stays with the team, he's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. So we wanted to make sure that since this is an update video, we were already kind of correcting our last running back rankings. We got in here, we talked about what actually happened today. There's a lot to get into, a lot to unpack here. Where do you want to start, Will?
I guess we can start with just the possibilities. What happened today? It's a crazy thing that happened. The fact that he's on this PUP list. It seems like he does have this injury now, because if he doesn't have an injury and he's on the PUP list, this is concerning. But I guess he just is injured. So this kind of throws a bit of a wrench into things.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up, because I think prior to this all going down, most people assumed he was going to be activated off the PUP. At least, even if he was dealing with an injury, that would make him more valuable in trade talks and stuff like that. So the fact that he didn't get traded, he wasn't activated off PUP, makes it hopefully clear, unless somebody's lying, that he is hurt. So he's going to have to recover from whatever that injury is. We still don't have specifics about it, but it seems like a back injury right now. So we got to wait for him to get healthy. It's going to be at least 4 weeks. And then there's the question of, he's still on the Colts. That relationship is clearly fractured, if not, entirely broken. Does he hold out the rest of the season, even if he comes back off a PUP? I don't know. There's too much speculating to really be done. But I think the next question is, since it is peak draft season, we just got past the draft weekend where a ton of people had their fantasy drafts, and we're coming up towards probably the biggest draft weekend, Labor Day weekend. What do you do right now with the information that we currently have as of today? Where are you drafting him?
Yeah, I think so. According to Fantasy Pros, he's ranked as the 22nd overall player, which is somewhere at the back half of the second round. That's not really what we've seen in mocks. We've seen a lot of mid, third, late third round Jonathan Taylor picks. But with this news and this range of outcomes is so crazy, because it's anything from he lands in a better team after missing 4 games, because the 4 games is definite. He's definitely missing 4 games.
Right.
But he could land with a better team and have a great outlook for the rest of the season and perform at an extremely high level. Or he could just not play at all. So it's tough to really say if you should have Jonathan Taylor on your team, where he should go in drafts. I feel like he's going to end up going somewhere in the 5th or 6th round. probably somewhere around like that Javonte Williams, David Montgomery, all that mix of running backs, maybe even Alvin Kamara. Those guys, he's going to end up going around there, I feel like. But I just don't know if that's even worth the value that you could get right there, to be honest with you.
With how risky it could potentially be, yeah, I think that's a good spot to put him. I think that's probably where he belongs, just kind of balancing both the upside and the floor of what could happen there. It's going to be hard to predict where he actually ends up. I think there's going to be plenty of leagues where he still goes in that third, fourth range. There's going to be some leagues. I saw a bunch of people on Twitter talking about him going in like the 9th and 10th round in drafts now. So yeah, it's going to be a huge range. It's going to be hard to gauge what your league mates are going to do. You just got to figure out where you're comfortable. And I think, so you talked about Javonte Williams. If we're comparing those two guys specifically, Javonte seems to be well recovered from his knee injury. Even if he's not 100% to start the season, he's probably going to play week 1 and maybe be ramped up, week 4, week 6, week 8 at the latest. Knowing that he's playing in the situation that he's in, are you taking him over Jonathan Taylor right now?
That's a tough question. It depends on how I built my team up to that point, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But at the same time, that upside of Jonathan Taylor, it's tough to just straight up deny it. It's tough to look that in the face and say, I don't want that on my team. But
the thing
it's
is
also easy to look that risk in the face and be like, I don't want that on my team as well.
Right. I think, because we're going to get into this, we'll play the rest of the video after this. This is supposed to be a short cut in, but it's going to be a lot of the video. We get into what happens if Jonathan Taylor gets traded to the Dolphins. That's kind of the ideal situation. I think if he does get traded there, I probably would still take him ahead of Javonte, because then the risk of the holdout is probably gone. We're only waiting on the PUP and recovery from the actual injury, and it's just a better fantasy situation, an offensive environment to be in general. So at that point, yeah, I'm very happy with him kind of in that 5th round range. If he stays with the Colts, though, even if he does play, we talked about how it doesn't look great for him with Anthony Richardson coming to town, with the offensive line not being as great as in years past. It gets sketchy real quick.
Yeah, it's like you said, if he stays with the Colts, it's not the ideal situation that you would really want. And at that point, if he does, I would take Javonte Williams over Jonathan Taylor in that instance. Just because I'm taking the guy who's with the more cohesive team as of right now. I could say that the Broncos are more cohesive right now than the Colts are, even though, the Broncos were what they were last year. But at the same time, Jonathan Taylor, even in his very, very best year with the Colts, where he was the RB1 in fantasy, it was the lowest scoring RB1 season, we've ever had. So even still, that upside with the Colts is not all that great. He really just did that in a year where a lot of other players were not available or not healthy. So
yeah,
the upside is there. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor's a bad player. I'm not saying that at all. It's just the situation is not great for him.
Yeah. Let's play a couple more name games here, and then we can wrap it up and get back to the rest of the actual video. Alvin Kamara, before or after JT?
I know Alvin Kamara is going to play when he gets back from those 3 weeks. That's the thing. So I probably would have to take Alvin Kamara at the moment.
Cam Akers.
I would still go Jonathan Taylor. Because Cam Akers, you're getting a 4-week advantage, but still very similar situations, even if he stays with the Colts.
Yeah, I would too. But that kind of begs an interesting question, because I think Cam Akers is substantially higher in ADP than Kamara is. That's just how we have our rankings based. So if people continue to take Cam Akers where he's at 56th overall, so what would that make him? Puts him in what, like the 4th, 5th round range?
I believe so. That should be 4th, 5th.
Or am I tripping? We just can't do math, but that's okay. Cam Akers is going a little bit higher. I think Alvin Kamara is going like in the 7th, 8th round range. And so if we're still taking Kamara over Jonathan Taylor, like that kind of tells you we're talking like 8th, 9th round JT. It's crazy to say, But that's around where I think I'm comfortable at this point with no added news from today. Again, I'll give you the date, Tuesday the 29th at 11:36 p.m. Uh, that's around where I'm comfortable taking JT at this point. It's hitting close to rock bottom.
Yeah, because it's just I'd rather take the guys who are definitely going to be out there on the field over the guy who I really don't know what he's going to do. We just don't know. And
Yeah.
it's funny because, like you said, if you knew for a fact he was going to get traded and go to a better team, you know, you would take him in that 5th, 6th round range. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be an easy decision. But unfortunately, the season starts next week, and we have to make a decision, you know, very soon. So
Yeah.
with that being said, like Eric said, 8th, 9th round is where I feel comfortable, where I think, like, you know, if he doesn't do anything there, it was an 8th, 9th round pick. Whatever. A lot of those guys aren't really going to do too much anyways.
Yeah. So that was a little bit longer than we expected the cut in to be, but obviously we wanted to make sure that you guys were fully up to date and gave you the breakdown after today's information. But with that being said, yeah, let's kick it back to the video. But Brees Hall, we had at the back end of the A tier. With Dalvin Cook coming in, where do you think he belongs now?
With Dalvin Cook coming in, I think he's definitely got to be moved down the tier. Just the fact that he was at the back end of that and his situation has gotten worse. But I wouldn't move him behind guys like Travis Etienne or Najee Harris or Ramondre Stevenson, just because the situations are, you know, somewhat similar in a way. In
You
terms
think
of they're
so?
going to be splitting backfields with another running back. Like, I think Tank Bigsby's going to get a good amount of burn. If anything, I would bump Travis maybe a little bit above Brees Hall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would have him behind Joe Mixon for sure. But I would still have him in front of guys like Najee, just because I feel like he's more talented than Najee. I feel like he's going to do well. But also, you know, Jahmyr Gibbs, I feel like his ceiling's so high. It's tough to put him, you know, it's kind of tough to keep him in front of Jahmyr Gibbs when I think about it. What do you think about this?
So I guess it's also a little bit different because I'd probably change around the seats here a little bit. I can fully understand with the way that it's currently arranged, not wanting to put him in the C tier because he's well above guys like James Conner, Kenneth Walker, the guys near the bottom of that. We can talk about it and we can potentially shake things up. On my list right now, I have him at the front of the C tier, but it's a smaller and slightly more, I don't know about elite, but a slightly more improved group than what we currently have in that tier, just because I've moved some other things around in front of him. But I'd be fine with either like back end of B tier, front end of C tier. I think I can make the argument for probably all of the guys that we currently have in B ahead of him. Maybe Najee would be a tough one. I absolutely agree that Brees is more talented than probably all the guys in that group. But we gotta see what he's gonna look like coming off of the injury. I do expect that he's gonna be close to 100% at week 1. But you know, they didn't bring in Dalvin for no reason, and so I think it's gonna take, you know, 6-8 weeks for him to really put Dalvin behind him completely on the depth chart, if at all. And that's a significant chunk of the season to have a guy that's, you know, all of these guys are in somewhat of a committee. Like, it's not a total workhorse unless you're at the very top, like the guys like Saquon, Bijan, and stuff like that, and Derrick Henry, I guess. But yeah, so that's kind of my argument for why I would have him behind most of the guys in B tier at least.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I like that argument. So where would you, in this instance, where would you place Dalvin Cook? Is he even on this tier list for you?
That's a tough one. I'm not taking him in front of Sanders, Pierce, probably not Kamara.
But you would take him before Rashad White?
I don't know that I would either, because I think that Dalvin, you know, they're going to be in a decent offense, or he's going to be in a decent offense, and he's going to have, I think, a fairly significant share for the first few weeks, but it really could kind of fall off a cliff pretty quickly if Brees establishes himself.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers could play more of a role in Dalvin's, you know, playing time than just like the traditional running back committee? Just because I feel like they'd value Aaron Rodgers' opinion a good amount. Do you feel like they would give Dalvin more of the nod this year since they have him on a 1 year versus Brees, who, you know, he's ramping back up, probably be at 100% by like week 6, week 7?
Yeah, like that would make sense. But also, I think Aaron Rodgers, the team, the coaching staff, all involved, they're just gonna do
What's best for the team?
yeah, what's gonna help them win games. And if Brees is what's gonna help them win games, they're gonna put him out there. If it's Dalvin, if it's both, that's what they're gonna do. It's our job, obviously, to try to decipher what that's gonna be ahead of time, but it's a tough task. I'd probably put him near the back of D tier, just because I don't know what his season long, like his, the full reach by the end of the season, what he's gonna look like. Really, realistically looking at it, like I'd probably still take David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift over him at this point.
Okay, so we'll put him at the back end of that for right now. But hey, Dalvin Cook making the tier list, guys. He's on the tier list
Yeah.
now.
What are your thoughts though? I'm curious what you have to say on the matter.
No, I think in terms of talent, this is definitely where I would have them at. In terms of like Brees being above, Dalvin being below. Dalvin might be a little bit further up for me, and like instead of guys like Rashad White, just because I don't believe in Rashad White or Alexander
Yeah.
Madison. But at the
That's fair.
same time, like you said, it's tough to put him in front of guys like David Montgomery because I feel like David Montgomery is going to have a good year with the Lions. So
Yeah, I think that's another one. If we want to take the time to do it, and maybe we should, he's a guy that I'd probably have him creeping up the list a little bit. Specifically, David
Okay.
Montgomery. You wanna shake this thing up
I'm down.
real quick, and
Let's
then we
move
can
it
go
around.
back to individual players.
Yeah, let's move it around.
Let's start from the top then. Christian, for me personally, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, and Bijan Robinson are in a tier of their own.
Okay.
Do you think that's correct? Do you think anybody else belongs in that tier?
I've since, recently changed my opinion on Saquon and Tony Pollard in terms of like what I think their workloads are going to be. And I think those
Yeah.
3 guys that you named are the ones who are, like you said, they're going to have those alpha super workloads and they're super talented themselves as well. So I think that's a good
Yeah.
fit.
Okay. So let's move Saquon and Tony P down to the A tier. Pollard, Barkley, Jacobs, Chubb. I don't have Derrick Henry in this tier. I have him one below. It's hard for me to bet against him, and we've talked about that so much throughout the offseason. Just how many times the fantasy community has tried to count him out, and every time he seems to, kind of answer the call. But the offensive situation might be the worst it's ever been around him. Like, this offensive line is legit dead last. They're going to be awful. Ryan Tannehill coming back off of injury, another year older. Traylon Burks already dealing with injury. I don't know. I have a hard time putting him in the same tier as these guys whose upside is this high.
No, I think that's fair because, like you said, it's kind of similar situations, at least career-wise, for like Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon. Like efficiency's going down, but obviously they got those high-volume roles, so you don't want to count them out completely. So I think this is a good spot for them because, it's like you said, the upside, it's tough to see it, but the floor is there.
Okay. And then obviously Jonathan Taylor's sitting there. We don't have to go in depth quite yet, but I think
Depending
probably
on the
still a good
landing
spot for him if he ends up in Miami. If not, we're gonna have to move him down. For me, the B tier, I have it as Henry, Gibbs, Ramondre, Etienne, Mixon, and Najee. That's a good cluster that I want to talk about. Like Derrick Henry, we got to have at the top of the tier just because he's shown year in and year out to be a top 5 back, and even with the situation, I'm not going to move him any lower than where he currently is. But Gibbs, Stevenson, Etienne. Now, you might disagree because I think you're a little bit higher on Mixon than I am this year. But those 3 guys are almost indistinguishable for me. I have such a hard time picking between them in drafts, especially when you get to that middle to sort of back end of the 3rd round. That's where I feel like a lot of times they end up. I never know which one to go with. I'm happy with all 3 of them. But do you have any sort of take on which ones you prefer?
I mean, if I had to pick one that I preferred out of the 3, I'd probably go Jahmyr Gibbs, just because I feel like
Okay.
he's got the more solidified role out of the 3. Because it's tough to know what Ramondre Stevenson's really going to be doing with the team now that Zeke's there. Because, I love to make fun of Zeke and say he's going to be a 2-down grinder. He's going to trip and fall for 3 yards every time. But the reality of the matter is Zeke is a very good pass blocker, and he's not a 0 in the passing game as well. So I don't know how much Zeke is really going to get involved. It could be more than we think. It could be not at all. It's tough with New England. So I'm not super confident in that one. With Travis Etienne, I think Tank Bigsby's going to be involved more. than people give him credit for. And I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, Tank Bigsby fumbled the other day. He fumbled during the preseason game." Okay, Travis Etienne led the league in fumbles last year for running backs, so I don't think that's much of a problem for the Jaguars. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, with that passing floor and just that productivity that we're expecting them to get immediately, I would probably go with him over the other two if I had a choice.
That's the biggest thing for me, and I think I agree with you in that situation. Ramondre, we saw an incredible passing workload last season. We've seen Zeke eat into that with other guys before, and so I don't want to project him for necessarily more than he had. And we saw Travis Etienne, who we expected to have a high, kind of catch ceiling, target ceiling, and not quite reach that. I fully expect Jahmyr to surpass both of those guys fairly easily in terms of receiving. Yet to be seen what he's going to get on the ground with David Montgomery there, because I do expect big things for both of them. But yeah, I think the upside and the floor with just the amount of targets he's going to see is probably enough to put him at the top of that group. Okay, so that's the B tier. And then the C tier gets a little bit smaller for me. But again, really, once you get past 14, it gets kind of wishy-washy pretty fast. I definitely like Breece Hall here. I guess I could see moving him up to the back end of B tier if we wanted to argue that. I could also potentially see that. But I have Aaron Jones and Dameon Pierce in this group for the C tier.
I love how we've come back around to Dameon Pierce, man.
Yep. I've moved him up fairly substantially. His role in the offense is just so solid. And I've seen some people kind of have opposing takes on what his passing game usage is going to be, because we saw from him this preseason that he was very involved on passing downs and wasn't coming off the field for the likes of Devin Singletary or Dare Ugbo-Nwale or anything like that. But he also wasn't targeted a single time this offseason or this preseason. So yet to be seen like how involved he really is going to be, but it's good to see that he's not off the field, and that alone is enough for me to put him up there in what's going to be a really run-heavy offense.
Hell yeah, especially like you said with a rookie quarterback. I think the checkdowns are going to be there for sure, because it's something that's going to come along with it. And Dameon Pierce, I think he can handle the workload. We saw it last year. He did get a little banged up throughout the season, but that's kind of expected at the running back position at a certain point as well.
Yeah, it's hard to really determine how predictive that's going to be, because it is worth noting that at Florida, he never handled like a workhorse type role. He never had a huge workload put on his shoulders. And so we're not totally sure if he can handle it. And like you said, he slowed down at the end of last season, but he's got the requisite size, at least for us to believe that he has that within his capability. And Florida, kind of similar to Georgia, if you follow college football, they never have like a true workhorse running back. They always split the workload up. So could be just kind of a historical school context type deal, instead of indicative of what he's capable of.
True. Very true.
But yeah, so that would be the end of the C tier for me. James Conner's a guy that I've been talking about a lot this offseason. I still believe that he's going to be very involved, but it's hard for me to really be that excited about a guy that's, turning 28, 29 heading into the season, who's been banged up consistently throughout his career, on a team that's now very clearly tanking. Like, I don't think you can make it any more obvious than what they're doing at this point.
Yeah, it's painfully obvious. They're starting a guy who's probably been with the team for a week and a half at quarterback. So.
Yeah.
I don't think they're planning on even scoring a touchdown this year, to be honest with you. So it's hard to say James Conner's going to go out there and score.
Yeah, yep, it makes it tough. It does make it tough. So I've moved him down. I want to hear your take on Javonte and J.K. Dobbins. Javonte, I'm starting to move up a little bit. I would still probably have him a tier below Breece, Jones, and Pierce, just because I expect the ramp up to be a little bit slower. But his recovery has been incredible. And then J.K.'s offseason has just been weird with the contract/injury talks
hold-in.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
the hold-in. So what are your thoughts on those two guys and where they belong on this list?
So my thoughts on Javonte Williams, I think if we're looking at redraft right now. So if we're taking a look at that, I think he's in a good spot. He's somebody who could possibly have some high upside in terms of getting out there on the field and exceeding expectations, because he's been ahead of time on his injury timeline about this whole offseason. So the upside is there in the fact that he's going to be in a Sean Payton offense. But at the same time, we don't really know what this offense is going to look like. They've also gone through a lot of injuries. So it's tough to see how this team is going to shake out going into the regular season. But in terms of dynasty, I think Javonte Williams is one of the best buys right now.
Yeah.
But in terms of redraft, I think he belongs right here because I think Samaje Perine is going to be pretty involved, especially early on. Just trying to get him more and more ramped up. I think he's going to be close to being ready to go when the season starts, but it's still going to take a few weeks.
Okay.
And even then, he's
So
going to be
when-
splitting that backfield pretty heavily with Samaje, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. So when you say he belongs right here, is that in the C tier or is that in the front end of the D tier?
Front end of the D tier. I have him right behind like James Conner because I feel like, James Conner's still going to have his role, even though it's going to be a bad role. He's still going
Yeah.
to be the guy in that backfield. Whereas Javonte, I believe in the talent. I somewhat believe in the offense, but I still got to see how they're going to use him going forward because it was a pretty major injury.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Maybe I've gotten a little too much of the injury optimism bug in me right now. We've heard throughout the offseason, especially a guy that we've listened to throughout the years, Nick Ercolano over at BDGE, talk about how he's not going to be drafting Javonte. He's not going to be part of the injury optimist club. It was too serious of a knee injury. He's going to wait the year. But he's starting to kind of pump the brakes on his own take recently and moving Javonte up slightly. I think his take is actually a pretty good one in that because of all of the optimism we've seen on Twitter about his recovery and his timeline, he's probably going to move up in ADP. And so even from where he was, even if he's willing to take him earlier, the ADP is still going to jump that, and he's probably not going to have a lot of them on his teams. I think I'm probably in a similar boat, but I've taken a little bit more of him recently in like the 6th, 7th round if he makes it there. But I can see this ranking being a good one for Javonte.
Yeah, he's not somebody you want to really, like you said, he's not someone you really want to reach for. You don't want to go out of your way to get him,
Yeah.
but if he falls to you at a value, absolutely, I would take him on my team.
Yeah. And then Dobbins. I don't know what to do with Dobbins, man. I'm so excited about this offense. I think the more pro style, more spread out offense could actually be a benefit to Dobbins. Like obviously we've seen these run heavy schemes and stuff like that lead to incredibly efficient years for Dobbins. But I think he's going to continue to be efficient just because that's the type of runner he is. And when you have Lamar Jackson in the backfield with you, it's tough to have all of the attention focused on the running back. And it seems like, just based on the way that the depth chart has shaked out, that he's probably going to get a more significant portion of the overall team carries than he has in years past. Gus Edwards is kind of falling down the depth chart behind guys like Justice Hill and even potentially Keaton Mitchell. And I don't really see those guys eating heavily into J.K. Dobbins' workload. So this might be the most volume we've ever seen him get.
Yeah, I think it's exciting for J.K. Dobbins. Like you said, the situation around him has been weird, but the team situation, like you said, it feels like it's gotten better because it feels like the offense is going to be opened up a little bit more, maybe not as focused on the run game because they should be airing it out a little bit more. Plus, you still got to worry about Lamar at the same time. So J.K. Dobbins should be able, like you said, his efficiency should really shine through this season, and he should have a good season. But with that being said, where would I rank him at? I would probably rank him above Javonte Williams and James Conner. Would you go back into the C tier for him, or would you stay front end of the D tier?
That's a tough question. I don't know. There's so many question marks, but like, I feel like most of them are narrative driven, not really driven around his play or his health even.
Yeah, because he's fully
So with
healthy
that,
going into, at least as far as we know. You know, there is the weird injury situation, but I'm pretty sure he's probably pretty healthy right now.
yeah, it was mostly contract driven. The reason that he was on the pup
Yeah.
is what it seems like to me. So yeah, I think I'm fine having him there at the back of the C tier. Even if he has a similar role as he has had in years past, where it's more of like a 10 to 15 touch a game guy, with the amount of efficiency that he's seen and provided throughout his first, what, three years? Has it been 3 years already?
Yes, this is year 4 for him right now.
Yeah. With the production that we've seen him put up, I think that is probably enough for him to be worthy of this kind of back end of the C tier range, and then the upside is even higher than that. So yeah, I'm fine with having him here.
I 100% agree. I like that. Is there anybody from down below that is going to be making it up to this tier list at all?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think David Montgomery probably belongs a little bit higher in D tier, but I wouldn't put him into C tier. Um, who else could potentially make it up there? People like Miles Sanders, but I don't know. I'm not super high on just his offensive environment around him. I think his role is going to be good, but I don't see a huge ceiling for him. Um, Kenneth Walker, we've both been down on him in his situation. He's still incredibly talented. We like him, the player. We think that the offense is going to be good. It's just whether or not he's going to get anywhere near the workload that he had last year, and that's why I have him down here. But it's possible that he could make his way up there as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's just the situation doesn't lend itself to, fantasy friendly. It lends itself to a really good football team, but not
Yeah.
to a fantasy friendly football team.
Yeah. Alvin Kamara, any thoughts on that? I'm not willing to move him up there, but he could with his career and what he's posted in the past, he could obviously get there.
I think one, there's too many running backs in New Orleans right now. Like there's hella right
Yeah.
now. I think Jamal Williams is going to start out the season pretty heavy on Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller should be back healthy somewhat soon at the start of the season as well.
He already is
back actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we had talked about the situation with him having another knee sprain, but then he played in the preseason game like 3 days later.
Yeah.
So clearly it wasn't serious, and he looked pretty good as well. So if that was a more serious knee sprain and it was just Kamara and Jamal, I think maybe I'd be willing to creep him up a little bit. But yeah, there's too many mouths to feed now back there that are all fairly talented.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And he's going to be out for the first 3 games of the season as well. So,
Yeah, very true. Alexander Madison, we've talked about like the potential for the 3-down role is there, and if he gets that in this offense, I think he probably deserves to be in the C tier. But I think the two of us are fairly aligned that we just don't think he's a very good running back. We don't think that what he's shown throughout his career warrants him being that true workhorse for this team. There's other talented guys in the backfield there that I think could work in for touches. Are you still kind of on that same page?
yeah, they just got too good of a group for like a committee for them to just lean on Alexander Madison and think they're going to be successful for the season, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just makes more sense from a team perspective also. Like, even if you do believe in Alexander Madison, with the talent that you have around him, just keep him healthy. You spell him a little bit. There's no need to make him that 3-down workhorse.
I will say he might get the most valuable touches in terms of who they trust the most. He might get the goal line
Absolutely.
work, that work in between the 20s, or not in between the 20s, at the 20 red zone work. I think he's going to be that guy, but how good is he going to be with that role? That's the question I've got, because he's not Dalvin Cook at the end of the day.
Definitely not. But we'll have to see with that one. People are hyping up Cam Akers. I'm still worried off the Achilles that he's ever going to reach kind of the potential that we had hopes that he would get to. People say that at the end of last season, he bounced back and looked like his old self. I'm just a little bit wary about that. And also, like, Sean McVay and the coaching staff haven't been super positive about his situation. They've been hyping up Kyron Williams and how involved he's going to be in the offense. They drafted a guy that we both like in Zach Evans. Not that I'm saying he's going to be hyper involved or anything, but I think that he could potentially take a few carries here and there. That could increase as the season goes on. So I just don't think that the workload is going to be there in an offense with, not many scoring opportunities and a horrible offensive line.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be running the ball a ton because I feel like they're going to be behind a lot. So it's tough to bank on it unless, they're getting to the goal line and Cam Akers ends the season with like 12 touchdowns just off goal line touches. But other than that,
I just can't.
Yeah, his efficiency went out the window after rookie year after he got hurt. He's just been kind of like the super volume guy, which is cool because that's how LA kind of runs it. They usually have one running back. But like you said, we've heard a lot of positive buzz from Kyron Williams. This is going to be a bad team. They've been specifically talking about Kyron Williams in the passing game as well. So it's tough to be optimistic towards Cam Akers and bump him up for sure.
Absolutely. And then the last guy that we have listed here in the D tier is DeAndre Swift. My opinion on him hasn't like totally changed, but I think I am coming around just a little bit. The team usage seems to be in his favor. All of the reports that I've heard that are viable, because we've heard some crazy ones about Kenneth Gainwell being the RB1. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it does seem like DeAndre Swift is going to get the first crack at being the RB1 on this team. It's going to be a committee. He's not going to be a 3-down workhorse. Jalen Hurts is still going to steal goal line touches. So there's a lot of kind of caps to his upside. But we've seen talented running backs in this scheme before be incredibly efficient, have tons of scoring opportunities and stuff like that. It's just if he can stay healthy, like I still believe in DeAndre Swift, the talent. So it's a tough balancing act there, because I think his floor could be rock bottom and his ceiling could be substantially higher than where he is right now.
Yeah, I think if they get him more involved, it's tough because DeAndre Swift, one of his main assets is that he's as good as he is in the receiving game, and he's on the Eagles. So it's tough to really, like you said, it's tough to really predict that. But when it comes to rushing, if he does get that first crack, because we have seen a lot of bad reports for Rashad Penny as of late, even seen him as a cut candidate possibly, so we may even see that today, possibly.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but I've seen that getting floated around as well.
But if DeAndre Swift gets that first crack, like you said, he's been very efficient with any time he's been running the ball. He doesn't have a ton of rushing yards over his career, but anytime he has run the ball, he's been pretty efficient with it. And behind this offensive line, it's a reason to be optimistic at the very least, but not overly optimistic. So I like this spot for him.
Okay. And then I'm checking Twitter one more time. I'm trying to see if there's any breaking news. Doesn't look like we're going to receive any. Again, 9:51 a.m. on Tuesday, August 29th. I apologize that the news didn't break while we were on air.
Yeah,
I think it is time to talk about JT.
Yeah, 'cause the hottest news right now is the Bengals have released Trevor Siemian. And,
Oh, well, that's not what we're looking for.
No. But with that being said, like you said, with JT, it's an interesting situation. We like the spot for him right here. You alluded to earlier, we like the spot for him if he's to land somewhere else. But if he's to stay with the Colts, you would bump him down.
Yeah, I think I like that spot if he lands in Miami specifically. So let's talk about that potential situation.
If he lands in Miami, I might bump him up, to be honest with you.
Even higher than this, you mean?
Maybe one spot in front of Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because Josh Jacobs, I feel like he's on a worse team. He's probably going to get a lot of volume, but he's on a worse team. If Jonathan Taylor goes to Miami, I feel like the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it's splitting hairs at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Josh Jacobs do it last year.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen him be incredibly involved, and especially in the passing game too, an area that we really haven't seen Jonathan Taylor be heavily involved. And tough to say what his passing game usage would look like on a new team. I think he is capable of it. He's not necessarily like a dynamic receiver, but get that man in space and he's going to be dangerous, obviously.
Yeah.
But they have other really good receiving backs on that team with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So I think that they'll probably work in as well in that aspect. So, yeah, we've seen JT finish as the RB1. We saw Jacobs finish as, the RB3 last year. I don't mind either one.
Yeah.
That's why they're in the same tier, at least. But yeah, I think Miami would be a fantastic landing spot. Obviously, the best offense he's ever been in. Maybe not the best offensive line. They're still kind of struggling with that group.
Mm-hmm.
But the scoring opportunities would be incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be... Mike McDaniel would have a good time. He'd have a really good time with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. But if he's to stay with the Colts, what do you think about that?
So... Let's break it down into all the possible scenarios. If he stays with the Colts and plays the whole season, there's no holdout, there's no relationship issues where I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen
like
there?
That,
yeah. But we're not going to predict that necessarily. If he plays the full season with the Colts, I hate to say it because we've seen the highs from him and what he can do. I'd probably have him near the back end of B tier.
Yeah, I put him right there in that Joe Mixon, Najee Harris cluster.
Yeah, that's exactly where I would have him. He hasn't been around all offseason. Obviously, the relationship it's rocky. That doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll decrease his workload, but it does mean that Anthony Richardson has been kind of like the main weapon throughout the offseason. They've probably worked him in tons of goal line packages. Shane Steichen, we've seen him do that with Jalen Hurts, 13 rushing touchdowns last year. Anthony Richardson is like a souped up Jalen Hurts. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster. He's going to be even better of a weapon on the goal line. So that's the main concern with Taylor, is that it's going to be a lot of touchdown vultures from Anthony Richardson, probably carries just in general as well. And I don't see Anthony Richardson checking it down much in the receiving game.
I was just about to say that. After watching all the film and kind of watching how he plays, there's no way in hell that guy's ever checking down to a running back. He's just going to run it himself.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah,
he's better than all the running backs. Why would I
not-
check it down when I can run it myself?
He's not going to do that. So, expecting a running back in that backfield to be successful in the passing game, I don't really see it unless it's a design play like that, like it's a design screen. But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, I don't see that guy ever really checking down too much.
Yeah. And it sucks to say, because obviously we love Jonathan Taylor. He's incredibly talented. Just from a pure talent perspective, at least a top 5 back in the league, I would say. So for him to be all the way down there in that kind of 12 to 14 range seems disrespectful, but I think it's realistic.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it's a similar situation. It's tough to be optimistic because like it's going to be capped all around. Just about every aspect you can look at, it's going to be capped.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that covers most of it. I want to talk more specifically about Ramondre. I think this is we put him in the spot that he probably belongs in, but we didn't talk a ton about his actual situation with Zeke there. Tough to really predict how involved Zeke is going to be, and you mentioned that earlier. But I do think Ramondre struggled a little bit at the goal line. He didn't have the highest success rate there, and that's just a place where Zeke has always excelled throughout his career, and that's really what worries me. I don't think that Zeke is going to take enough of the in between the 20s work. I don't think he's going to take enough of the passing work to really bump Ramondre down significantly. But the goal line work is what scares me. We saw Ramondre be really productive and be, depending on format, close to an RB1 last year, even with only 5 touchdowns. And so I don't think he needs that to be great. But I think that's what would put him over the top if Zeke weren't there.
Yeah, because Ramondre Stevenson, like you said, he's not touchdown dependent by any measure of the word or any measure of the term.
Yeah.
But in terms of not having the goal line carries, it's just going to cap touchdown upside, which, like you said, that's a good amount of points. But it's not like it's damning for Ramondre Stevenson as a player himself and his style of play.
Yeah. And I don't know how significant it is, but worth bringing up, they did just trade Pierre Strong to the Browns. Not that I thought that he was really going to eat heavily into his workload, but he was a guy that the team had kind of talked about as a passing down specialist. And so that probably means even more work for Ramondre in the passing game that would have potentially been split up otherwise. So that's good to see as well.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think that'll do it. Again, I would highly encourage you guys to check out our original running back video. We go more in depth on all of these players. But yeah, I feel like that was important. That was needed after all the shakeups that we saw, and hopefully we get that JT news soon, so we can get that out to you guys as soon as that breaks. We'll break it all down, come back to the channel, and we got you. But yeah, I think that'll do it. Will, what do you got to say to the people before we head out of here?
Make sure you guys do all that great YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you know when we drop all of our latest videos. Hit that like button. It's absolutely free, and it's the best way to advertise and get our stuff out there so other people can watch it. And let us know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with any of the placements of these guys on our tier list. If you agree with any of our reasoning, disagree with any of our reasoning, sound off in the comments down below and let us know. But with that being said, Eric, you got anything else for the people before we go?
Yeah, real quickly, just check all of the links down in the description. We got a ton of cool stuff down there, whether it's our Discord link. Obviously, Will talked about hitting us up in the comments. We respond to all of those. But if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, head over to the Discord, be part of the community. We have a lot of fun in there. Also, links to our sponsors. We got stuff like Dynasty Owner, which is a really cool and unique Dynasty experience. If you're looking for something new and different, you can use our promo code to get 20% off over at Dynasty Owner. Also, League Winners, we are partnered with them and doing some work with them. They just brought in a bunch of new content creators to get your fix for the fantasy season, so go check them out. In conjunction with them, we are also partnered with Underdog. You can use our code FFLW for a 100% deposit match over there. And they also I think as of yesterday, just announced that they're also partnering with Sleeper, using that same code FFLW to get a 100% deposit match on Sleeper, so you can do any sort of drafts or prop bets and stuff like that on the Sleeper platform. So that's really cool. And then we also have Do Numbers if you are interested in some cool merch, apparel, t-shirts, hoodies. Will's wearing some right now, all that good stuff. So check the links in the description. Help us out. That would be fantastic. But I think that's probably all we got. So thank you for sticking with us until the end, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.